Well, greetings and salutations. Welcome to Piglet's Species Reveal Party. Yeah. Winnie the Pooh Part 3. Gonna glance through the chat and see is here. I can already see Paul Carganilla is here and is like, I think we all know why I'm here. Yes. That's awesome. Awesome start. Hello, Angelica Bolschweiler. First in the chat. Christina Beeland. Hello, darling. Meg Sampson. Hi. Dari and Daryl Mills. Those names run very quickly together if I'm not careful in my eyes. Let's see. Scrolling. Nick Davila here, but doing his taxes. All right, man. Glad you could join us. Anna, hello. Ruth Sanchez is here. Hello. My mom is here. Pam. Yep, gotta carry. Paul saying gotta carry the torch. Yeah, Paul is hoping for the armadillo response. Christy Davila. I hope Nick is doing justice to your taxes. I hope you both get money back and no one goes to jail. Melissa Catano, hi. What are we drinking tonight, Daryl? Tea and a little honey. I wish it were a little more exciting than that. I did sip a little whiskey right before the show, but full disclosure, that's what's in the cup. Hello, Charity Swanson. David Benjamin. Christy Davila, I'm sorry to hear it's been a rough few days. But yeah, I'm happy you are here to hear some good bedtime stories as well. Zachary White, how you doing, man? Yeah, no, tea and whiskey is normally a good combination. It's one that I highly recommend. On this occasion, the whiskey preceded the tea. Hello, Terry Smith. Hello, hello. So I'm going to do at least 2 Winnie the Pooh stories tonight. And, but it occurred to me, I haven't given a bio or mic adjustment. I haven't given any bio or background on A.A. Milne. I should also say as a disclaimer, on the first installation of Winnie the Pooh stories 2 weeks ago, I was mispronouncing his last name. I was pronouncing it Milne. I've been corrected in retrospect. It is A.A. Milne. So let that go into the records. David Benjamin is having a lazy margarita. That's a good name for it, actually, because I bet what it reads that you mixed up is still a pretty legit drink. So I have 2 really good questions submitted tonight for Ask Hunter Anything that we're gonna save for the end. One of them is a question that David Benjamin had submitted back in late December, and I apologized last week that I didn't get that message until right before the show last week. So got an answer for you, David. And we've got another question from Miss Christina Beelan. And we will take those questions at the end. All right, launching right in. So, who was this A.A. Milne character? Well, let's find out a little more together. And you like my reading rainbow type intro? So, all right, here's what we got. Here's what we've got for this guy. A.A. Milne, born in 1882. He lived up to the 50s. He made it to 1956. What did AA stand for? Alan Alexander Milne was an English-born author, best known for his books about the teddy bear Winnie the Pooh. Milne was a noted writer, primarily as a playwright, before the huge success of Pooh overshadowed all of his previous work. Milne grew up attending his father's small independent school, and one of his teachers was H.G. Wells. I mean, one of the great granddaddies of all of science fiction, author of The Time Machine, the War of the Worlds, just all kinds. At H.G. Wells, wow, that's a neat educational pedigree. But speaking of educational pedigrees, Milne graduated from Cambridge in 1903. He contributed humorous verse and whimsical essays to a leading British humor magazine called Punch. He joined the staff in 1906 and became an assistant editor. During this period, he published 18 plays and 3 novels. Considered, I cannot say this in an American accent, considered a talented cricket fielder, Milne played for 2 amateur teams that were largely composed of British writers. And get a load of who his teammates were. His teammates included fellow writers J.M. Barrie of Peter Pan fame, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle of Sherlock Holmes fame, and P.G. Wodehouse, the guy that came up with Bertie Wooster and Jeeves. Milne is, that is a hell of a cricket team, right? I would just... This kind of goes back to last week's question of if you could have a 4-person dinner with anyone living or dead. Well, if you could come up with like an amateur cricket team, I'd say that those are the cats I'd want to be on the team with. Wow. Milne is most famous for his 2 Pooh books. 2 Pooh books. About a boy named Christopher Robin, named after his son, Christopher Robin Milne. Milne lived from Christopher Robin Milne lived from 1920 to 1996. And his various characters inspired by his son's stuffed animals, most notably the bear named Winnie the Pooh. Christopher Robin's stuffed bear, originally named Edward, was renamed Winnie after a Canadian black bear named Winnie, after Winnipeg, Canada, which was used as a military mascot in World War I, was left to London Zoo during the war. The Pooh comes from a swan the young Milne named Pooh. We got that actually in the in the prelude to the first story. E.H. Shepard illustrated the original Pooh books using his own son's Teddy as the model. And by the way, those illustrations are just adorable and or hilarious. If you've never seen them, check that out. I mean, it's all public domain now. You can Google this and see the illustrations. That'd be neat, actually, if you Googled the illustrations and you could follow the illustrations as we're reading this. The rest of Christopher Robin Milne's toys, Piglet, Eeyore, Kanga, Roo, and Tigger, were incorporated into A.A. Milne's stories, and two more characters, Rabbit and Owl, were created by Milne's imagination. Why is Rabbit such a jerk? I just gotta ask. Like why did you gotta have one in every group? I guess. Like, who was Rabbit being a jerk to last week? Christina was even just like a little like big-eyed, and her eyebrows are going up and her forehead's wrinkling, and going like, "Wow, Rabbit, calm it down a little." Christina? Who was she? Who was he being a jerk to? I can't remember now. So Rabbit and Owl just came purely out of Milne's imagination. They weren't based on Christopher Robin's toys. But Christopher Robin's own toys are now on display in New York in a museum where 750,000 people visit them every year. A memorial plaque in Sussex, England's Ashdown Forest, a.k.a. the 100-acre wood, was unveiled by Christopher Robin in 1976 and commemorates the work of A.A. Milne and Ernest H. Shepard, illustrator, in creating the world of Pooh. Milne once wrote of Ashdown Forest, "In that enchanted place, on the top of the forest, a little boy and his bear will always be playing." Wow, that is touching. In 2005, Winnie the Pooh merchandising products generated $6 billion, a figure surpassed by only Mickey Mouse. No great surprise. I'm just looking down in time to see Paul saying Rabbit is the character in every scene Everly creates with her dolls that is just always a cranky jerk face. Yeah, that's that's funny. Just wait till we get to the introduction of the characters Kanga and Roo, because Rabbit is just jerk face. Total jerk face. Oh, good. Zachary White's doing pretty good and ready for his bedtime story. That's awesome. All right, scrolling down, see what else I missed in the interim. Hello, Aaron Reeves. And Rhonda Soto, hi. So yeah, there's a little bit of background. And hello, Celia. Lovely to see you with us. So there was a best-selling book of poetry by A.A. Milne, published in 1924, that was also illustrated by E.H. Shepard. The poetry book was called When We Were Very Young. And I'm going to read to you one poem out of that book before we start the first short story. This will be the only poem of the night. There's a lot I want to get through of this, guys. This is the 38th poem in the book, and it's just titled Teddy Bear. It originally appeared in Punch magazine in February 1924. This was the first appearance of the famous character Winnie the Pooh, first named Mr. Edward Bear by Christopher Robin Milne. Don't worry, I am not forgetting the hood. It shall join us for the story. This poem is called Teddy Bear by A. Milne. A bear, however hard he tries, grows tubby without exercise. Our teddy bear is short and fat, which is not to be wondered at. He gets what exercise he can by falling off the ottoman, but generally seems to lack the energy to clamber back. Now, tubbiness is just the thing which gets a fellow wondering, and Teddy worried lots about the fact that he was rather stout. He thought, "If only I were thin. But how does anyone begin?" He thought, "It really isn't fair to grudge me exercise and air." For many weeks he pressed in vain his nose against the window pane and envied those who walked about, reducing their unwanted stout. None of the people he could see is quite, he said, as fat as me. Then, with a still more moving sigh, "I mean," he said, "as fat as I." Now, Teddy, as was only right, slept in the ottoman at night, and with him crowded in as well more animals than I can tell. Not only these, but books and things, such as a kind relation brings. Old tales of once upon a time and history retold in rhyme. One night it happened that he took a peep at an old picture book, wherein he came across by chance the picture of a king of France, a stoutish man, and down below these words, "King Louis so-and-so, nicknamed the Handsome." There he sat, and think of it, the man was fat. Our bear rejoiced like anything to read about this famous king, nicknamed the Handsome. Not a doubt, the man was definitely stout. Why then, a bear, for all his tub, might yet be named the Handsome Cub. Might yet be named? Or did he mean that years ago he might have been, for now he felt a slight misgiving? Is Louis so-and-so still living? Fashions and beauty have a way of altering from day to day. Is handsome Louis with us yet? Unfortunately, I forget. Next morning, nose to window pane, the doubt occurred to him again. One question hammered in his head. Is he alive? Or is he dead? Thus, nose to pane, he pondered. But the lattice window, loosely shut, swung open. With one startled, "Oh!" our teddy bear disappeared below. There happened to be passing by a plump man with a twinkling eye, who, seeing Teddy in the street, raised him politely on his feet, and murmured kindly in his ear soft words of comfort and of cheer. "Well, well, allow me, not at all. Tut, tut, a very nasty fall." Our Teddy answered not a word. It's doubtful if he even heard. Our bear could only look and look the stout man in the picture book. That handsome king, could this be he? This man of adiposity? Impossible, he thought, but still, no harm in asking. Yes, I will. Are you, he said, by any chance, His Majesty, the King of France? The other answered, I am that, bowed stiffly and removed his hat, then said, Excuse me, with an air, but is it Mr. Edward Bear? And Teddy, bending very low, replied politely, Even so. They stood below. They stood beneath the window there, the king and Mr. Edward Bear, and handsome, if a trifle fat, talked carelessly of this and that. Then said his majesty, Well, well, I must get on, and rang the bell. Your bear, I think, he smiled. Good day, and turned and went upon his way. A bear, however hard he tries, grows tubby without exercise. Our teddy bear is short and fat, which is not to be wondered at. But do you think it worries him to know that he is far from slim? No, just the other way about. He is proud of being short and stout. Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that poem. Okay. Yeah, thanks, Mom. when I was little, his mom said in the chat, but no, Christina Beelan, don't tell Hunter I told you, but his nickname was Roo when he was tiny because I carried him on the front of me in a Roo pouch. Yeah. Yeah, Dari is saying we got to go to that forest one day. I would love to see that forest. I'm particularly curious as to how close it is to 100 acres in actual area. Oh, he wasn't being a jerk to Tigger. We haven't seen Tigger yet. Not in the 4 stories that we've read thus far together. He was being a jerk to somebody else. Oh, in the animated, yeah, in that animated movie. Oh, that's right. No, in the Disney film, he literally wanted to lose Tigger in the woods to demoralize him into losing his bounce. Yeah, right. That's right. Okay. Trying to strand Tigger in the woods is a real jerk move indeed, David. I am tall and was once thinner, but lately I've had too much dinner. Patty Pinkstaff, thank you very much. Clicking the triple play. She has liked, shared, and saved it. Please, everyone, do the same. Got it. Yeah. After the show last week, Christina and I watched the Disney film, which I don't think I've seen since I was a very small child. All right. It is time for the first short story. Thank you, Zachary White. All righty. Winnie the Pooh, Chapter 5, in which Piglet meets a Heffalump. One day, when Christopher Robin and Winnie the Pooh and Piglet were all talking together, Christopher Robin finished the mouthful he was eating and said carelessly, "I saw a Heffalump today, Piglet." "What was it doing?" asked Piglet. "Just lumping along," said Christopher Robin. "I don't think it saw me."
I saw one once,
said Piglet. At least, I think I did, he said. Only, perhaps it wasn't.
So did I,
said Pooh, wondering what a heffalump was like. You don't often see them, said Christopher Robin, carelessly.
Not now,
said Piglet.
Not at this time of year,
said Pooh. Then they all talked about something else, until it was time for Pooh and Piglet to go home together. At first, as they stumped along the path which edged the 100-acre wood, they didn't say much to each other. But when they came to the stream and had helped each other across the stepping stones and were able to walk side by side again over the heather, they began to talk in a friendly way about this and that, and Piglet said,
"If you see what I mean, Pooh."
And Pooh said,
"That's just what I think myself, Piglet."
And Piglet said,
"But on the other hand, Pooh, we must remember."
And Pooh said,
"Quite true, Piglet, although I had forgotten it at the moment."
And just then, as they came to the 6 pine trees, Pooh looked round to see that nobody else was listening. I love their version of adult small talk, where they just go back and forth.
"But on the other hand, we must remember, quite true."
It's just what I think myself.
With absolutely no bearing or subject matter. Just as they came to the 6 pine trees, Pooh looked round to see that nobody else was listening and said in a very solemn voice,
"Piglet, I've decided something.
What have you decided, Pooh?"
I've decided to catch a heffalump."
Pooh nodded his head several times as he said this and waited for Piglet to say,
"How?"
or
"Pooh, you couldn't."
or something helpful of that sort, but Piglet said nothing. The fact was, Piglet was wishing that he had thought of it first.
"I shall do it,"
said Pooh, after waiting a little longer.
"by means of a trap. And it must be a cunning trap. So you'll have to help me, Piglet."
"Pooh,"
said Piglet, feeling quite happy again now.
"I will."
And then he said,
"How shall we do it?"
And Pooh said,
"That's just it. How?"
and then they sat down together to think it out. Pooh's first idea was that they should dig a very deep pit, and then the heffalump would come along and fall into the pit, and...
"Why?"
said Piglet.
"Why what?"
Why would he fall in?"
Pooh rubbed his nose with his paw and said that the heffalump might be walking along, humming a little song and looking up at the sky, wondering if it would rain, and so he wouldn't see the very deep pit until he was halfway down, when it would be too late. Piglet said that this was a very good trap, but supposing it were raining already? Pooh rubbed his nose again and said he hadn't thought of that. And then he brightened up and said that if it were raining already, the heffalump would be looking at the sky, wondering if it would clear up. And so he wouldn't see the very deep pit until he was halfway down, when it would be too late. Piglet said that now that this point had been explained, he thought it was a cunning trap indeed. Pooh was very proud when he heard this, and felt that the heffalump was as good as caught already. But there was just one other thing which had to be thought about, and it was this. Where should they dig the very deep pit? Piglet said that the best place would be somewhere where Heffalump was, just before he fell into it, only about a foot farther on.
"But then he would see us digging it,"
said Pooh.
Not if he was looking at the sky.
He would suspect,
said Pooh.
if he happened to look down.
He thought for a long time, and then added sadly,
It isn't as easy as I thought. I suppose that's why heffalumps hardly ever get caught.
That must be it.
said Piglet. They sighed and got up, and when they had taken a few gorse prickles out of themselves, they sat down again, and all the time Pooh was saying to himself,
If only I could think of something.
for he felt sure that a very clever brain could catch a heffalump, if only he knew the right way to go about it.
Suppose,
He said to Piglet,
you wanted to catch me. How would you do it?
Well,
said Piglet.
I should do it like this. I should make a trap, and I should put a jar of honey in the trap, and you would smell it, and you would go in after it,
And I would go in after it,
said Pooh excitedly.
only very carefully so as not to hurt myself. And I would get to the jar of honey, and I should lick around the edges, first of all, pretending that there wasn't any more, you know? And then I should walk away and think about it a little. And then I should come back and start licking in the middle of the jar. And then,
Yeah, well, never mind about that. There you would be, and there I should catch you. Now, the first thing to think of is, what do heffalumps like? I should think acorns, shouldn't you? We'll get a lot of... I said, wake up, Pooh!
Pooh, who had gone into a happy dream, woke with a start and said that honey was a much more trappy thing than acorns. Piglet didn't think so, and they were just going to argue about it when Piglet remembered that if they put acorns in the trap, he would have to find the acorns. But if they put honey, then Pooh would have to give up some of his own honey. So he said,
All right, honey then.
just as Pooh remembered it too and was going to say,
all right, acorns.
Honey.
said Piglet to himself in a thoughtful way, as if it were now settled.
I'll dig the pit while you go and get the honey.
Very well.
said Pooh, and he stumped off. As soon as he got home, he went to the larder, and he stood on a chair, and he took down a very large jar of honey from the top shelf. It had Hunny written on it, but just to make sure, he took off the paper cover and looked at it, and it looked just like honey,
But you never can tell.
said Pooh.
I remember my uncle saying once that he had seen cheese just this color.
So he put his tongue in and took a large lick.
Yeah,
He said,
it is. No doubt about that. And honey, I should say, right down to the bottom of the jar. Unless, of course,
he said,
somebody put cheese at the bottom just for a joke. Perhaps I should go a little further, just in case. In case heffalumps don't like cheese. Same as me.
and he gave a deep sigh.
I was right. It is honey. Right all the way down.
Having made certain of this, he took the jar back to Piglet, and Piglet looked up from the bottom of his very deep pit and said,
Got it?
and Pooh said,
Yeah, but it isn't quite a full jar.
and he threw it down to Piglet, and Piglet said,
No, it isn't. Is that all you've got left?
and Pooh said,
Yes.
because it was. So Piglet put the jar at the bottom of the pit and climbed out, and they went off home together.
Well, good night, Pooh,
Said Piglet when they had gotten back to Pooh's house.
and we meet at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning by the pine trees and see how many heffalumps we've got in our trap.
6 o'clock, Piglet. Have you got any string
No. Why do you want string?
to lead them home with?
Oh, I think heffalumps come if you whistle.
Some do, and some don't. You never can tell with heffalumps. Well, good night.
Good night.
And off Piglet trotted to his house, Trespassers W, while Pooh made his preparations for bed. Some hours later, just as the night was beginning to steal away, Pooh woke up suddenly with a sinking feeling. He had had that sinking feeling before, and he knew what it meant. He was hungry. So he went to the larder, and he stood on a chair and reached up to the top shelf and found nothing.
That's funny.
He thought.
I know I had a jar of honey there. A full jar. A full jar of honey right up to the top, and it had honey written on it so that I should know it was honey. That's very funny.
And then he began to wander up and down, wondering where it was, and murmuring a murmur to himself like this:
It's very, very funny. 'Cause I know I had some honey, 'cause it had a label on saying honey. A voluptuous full-up pot too, and I don't know where it's got to. No, I don't know where it's gone. Well, it's funny.
He had murmured this to himself 3 times in a singing sort of way, when suddenly he remembered. He had put it into the cunning trap to catch the heffalump.
Father,
Said Pooh.
it all comes of trying to be kind to heffalumps.
And he got back into bed. But he couldn't sleep. The more he tried to sleep, the more he couldn't. He tried counting sheep, which is sometimes a good way of getting to sleep, and, as that was no good, he tried counting heffalumps, and that was worse, because every heffalump that he counted was making straight for a pot of Pooh's honey, and eating it all. For some minutes, he lay there miserably, but when the 587th heffalump was licking its jaws and saying to itself, "Very good honey, this. I don't know when I've tasted better," Pooh could bear it no longer. He jumped out of bed, he ran out of the house, and he ran straight to the 6 pine trees. The sun was still in bed, but there was a lightness in the sky over the 100-acre wood, which seemed to show that it was waking up and would soon be kicking off the clothes. In the half-light, the pine trees looked cold and lonely, and the very deep pit seemed deeper than it was, and Pooh's jar of honey at the bottom was something mysterious, a shape and no more. But as he got nearer to it, his nose told him that it was indeed honey, and his tongue came out and began to polish up his mouth, ready for it.
Bother,
Said Pooh, as he got his nose inside the jar.
A heffalump has been eating it.
And then he thought a little and said,
Oh, no, I did. I forgot.
Indeed, he had eaten most of it, but there was a little left at the very bottom of the jar, and he pushed his head right in and began to lick. By and by, Piglet woke up. As soon as he woke, he said to himself, "Oh." Then he said bravely, "Yes." And then, still more bravely, "Quite so." But he didn't feel very brave, for the word which was really jiggetting about in his brain
was Heffalump's. What was a Heffalump like? Was it fierce? Did it come when you whistled? And how did it come? Was it fond of pigs at all? If it was fond of pigs, did it make any difference what sort of pig? Notice here, Piglet's criminal indifference toward armadillos. Supposing it was fierce with pigs, would it make any difference if the pig had a grandfather named Trespassers William? He didn't know the answer to any of these questions, and he was going to see his first Heffalump in about an hour from now. Of course, Pooh would be with him, and it would be much more friendly with two. But suppose Heffalumps were very fierce with pigs and bears. Wouldn't it be better to pretend that he had had a headache and couldn't go up to the 6 pine trees this morning? But then suppose it was a very fine day and there was no Heffalump in the trap. Here he would be, in bed all morning, simply wasting his time for nothing. What should he do? And then he had a very clever idea. He would go up very quietly to the 6 pine trees now, peep very cautiously into the trap, and see if there was a Heffalump there. And if there was, he would go back to bed, and if there wasn't, he wouldn't. So off he went. At first, he thought that there wouldn't be a Heffalump in the trap, and then he thought that there would. And as he got nearer, he was sure that there would, because he could hear it Heffalumping about in the pit like anything. Oh dear, said Piglet to himself, and he wanted to run away. But somehow, having got so near, he felt that he must just see what a Heffalump was like. So he crept to the side of the trap, and he looked in. And all the time Winnie the Pooh had been trying to get the honey jar off his head. The more he shook it, the more tightly it stuck.
Bother,
he said inside the jar, and,
oh, help,
and mostly,
oh.
And he tried bumping it against things, but as he couldn't see what he was bumping it against, it didn't help him. And he tried to climb out of the trap, but as he could see nothing but jar, and not much of that, he couldn't find his way. So, at last, he lifted up his head, jar and all, and made a loud roaring noise of sadness and despair. And it was at that moment that Piglet looked down. "Help! Help!" cried Piglet. "A Heffalump! A horrible Heffalump!" And he scampered off as hard as he could, still crying out, "Help! Help! A hellable Heffalump! Hoff! Hoff! A hellable Haralump! Hole! A hoffable Hellerup!" And he didn't stop crying and scampering until he got to Christopher Robin's house. "Whatever is the matter, Piglet?" said Christopher Robin, who was just getting up. Said Piglet, breathing so hard that he could hardly speak. A Heffalump. "Where?" Up there," said Piglet, waving his paw. "What did it look like?" It had the biggest head you ever saw, Christopher Robin. A great, enormous thing, like nothing, like a huge, big. I don't know, like what, like an enormous, big nothing, like a jar. "Well," said Christopher Robin, putting on his shoes, "I shall go and look at it. Come on." Piglet wasn't afraid if he had Christopher Robin with him, so off they went. "I can hear it, can't you?" said Piglet anxiously as they got near. "I can hear something," said Christopher Robin. It was Pooh, bumping his head against a tree root he had found. "There," said Piglet. "Isn't it awful?" And he held on tight to Christopher Robin's hand. Suddenly,
Christopher Robin began to laugh, and he laughed, and he laughed, and he laughed. And while he was laughing, crash went the Heffalump's head against the tree root. Smash went the jar, and out came Pooh's head again. Then Piglet saw what a foolish piglet he had been, and he was so ashamed of himself that he ran straight off home and went to bed with a headache. But Christopher Robin and Pooh went home to breakfast together. "Oh, Bear," said Christopher Robin, "how I do love you."
So do I,
said Pooh. The end. Oh dear, I see in the chat. It's Paul sees the error of the conspiracy. Oh, that's good, Paul. I hear Hunter's Pooh, but all I see in my head is John Steinbeck's Lenny. That's great. Of Mice and Men. Yeah. I love all the Team Armadillo hashtags in the chat now. The evolution of Hunter's nicknames, Rue to Sexy Jesus. Indeed, David Benjamin, Hunter is grinning and bearing it. Yeah. Christina, Bear. I love these stories. Tonight's bedtime story read by Mason Adams. Hello, Emily. Hello. Good. Christina loves the Piglet voice. Yeah, I like honey and kind of a lot of things.
I will hug him and squeeze him, and I will call him George.
Yep, that is the... Oh, yeah. Now I'm seeing Aaron's comments. It's only the Looney Tunes character that is too hard on smaller animals, and we'll call him George. And that's all... that the Looney Tunes based that from Steinbeck's of Mice and Men. The protagonist characters are George and Lenny. And Lenny tragically kills rabbits by just cuddling them too hard. And then, spoiler alert, but the play is like 80 or 90 years old or something like that. So he eventually, I think as I recall, he very innocently cuddles a young blonde girl to death. And it's okay. Now, what do? We have to put down the gentle giant, and it's just, oh my God, it's just such a tragedy. It's of Mice and Men. Thank you, Emily Thatcher. Love all the voices and accents. Ruth Sanchez. Oh, thank you for the reminder. I'm heading to Fairfax a week from yesterday. So, announcement: there will be no Fireside Tales next week. So there will be no Fireside Tales 1 week from tonight. 2 weeks from tonight, it will continue as normal. There will be a Lovecast next week. There will be a Lovecast this week. The Lovecast this week will happen from here in LA as normal, and the Lovecast next week will be from Tim Bloom's studio after. So I'm gonna do the Lovecast from Casa de Bloom next week before I return to LA. Okay, so it's close to 10. The next story is going to be way too long for this week. So I think, we're clearly going to have to do at least a fourth installation of Winnie the Pooh. I'm just, I don't know. I'm loving doing these. I just love these characters. Oh, okay, Christina. Next Fireside will be on Valentine's Day. Oh, man, maybe I should read something Valentine's Day related. I don't know. I just really want to keep going with part 4. Yeah, I don't think there's anything terribly romantic in Winnie the Pooh. Okay, well, we'll just have to plot and plan and do it. Well, Zachary, I think Christina cares. So, Patty, are you going to get Tim to play a few with you? It may just be that Tim and I together are just all the instruments and all the vocals that get recorded on. We're going to record at least 4 songs over the 3 days that we're up there in the studio together. And as I said, I'm going to be driving a week from yesterday, so that'll be a travel day on the 6th, Sunday the 6th. Kathy B is saying more Pooh. David's saying Pooh Bear is perfect for Valentine's Day. Definitely do a part 4. Okay, so I would like to get to those questions, though. We do have time for questions, and since I'm actively talking to Christina right now in the chat, the first question of tonight's 2 comes from Christina Beelan from Simi Valley. At what point in history did humans name our planet Earth, or did we just refer to the ground as Earth? Really, just how far back did that start? Okay, excellent question. So I'll answer the question first from the etymology of the word Earth. As I understand it, it comes from a Germanic root and has its place in Old English. Now, Old English was in use from about 400 AD, maybe 600 AD, all the way up till around 1150 AD. I don't think the word Earth itself made it into print until about 1,000 years ago. I'll give you the round number answer. That maybe as much as 1,500 years ago, but 1,000. At least 1,000 years ago. So not as old as the Bible, not nearly as old as the Torah, but older than modern English, to be sure. Now, the interesting thing about the question, though, is so the word evolved, right? Originally, it just meant dirt, soil, in the same way that a farmer might refer to the earth. He's not actually talking about the planet. He's talking about, a handful of something that you can pick up from a field. And that concept evolved. Now, that concept, I'm sure, also predates the English language. So that's a thing about languages, is a lot of linguists love to look at the evolution of any individual language and sort of look at the words that came along earliest in that language. Those are the words that are the most useful or the most prevalent. They also tend to be the shorter words in that language, whatever that language may be. They're the words that are going to be more monosyllabic, like earth, one syllable. And so the concept, just like really a lot of most conversational words, the concept is going to have way predated the linguistic symbol that we call that word, Earth. So there's that. 1,000 to 1,500 years, and the concept itself, I'm sure, went back much further. All right, this next question is from David Benjamin. This is a long question. This is the longest question I've ever received on the show, actually. David Benjamin, also coincidentally from Simi Valley. David's question is this. Hiya, Hunter. Here's a question that occurred to me the other day. What, if any, influence does the amount of predation a species experiences have on individual lifespan longevity? I.e., rabbits. They live a couple years in the wild and have many predators. Did they not evolve long life, say compared to a wolf at 14 years in the wild, because they experience much more predation? Certainly they evolved a short gestation period to cope with the predation, although this could be equally or more to blame for the short lifespan. Similarly, did a predator like the wolf evolve a much longer lifespan in part because it has fewer, if any, predators? What's interesting to me about this is whether there's a correlation between predation and longevity rather than size and longevity. I tend to think the bigger an animal is, the longer lived it tends to be, but that's not always the case. Small dogs usually live longer than big ones. Parrots and tortoises live as long or longer than humans. We just learned the other day bats can live 30 years, etc. Interesting, okay. Also chinchillas, small rodents, long gestation period, only 1 to 2 kits per litter. I have 2 chinchillas that are 16 years old and one that's almost 15. That's a good 3 to 4 times longer than similar sized rodents. Obviously, that's in captivity, but even in the wild, they're 8 to 10 years, about 5 to 10 times that of wild rabbits. But one thing all of these animals seem to have in common is a lack of things that eat them on a regular basis. I would think the mechanism at work here would be that in highly hunted species, individuals with the necessary mutations for longer lifespans don't outlive their non-mutated counterparts. So, over time, they don't outbreed everyone else by living longer to breed more. Either that, or species that experience high predation tend to evolve higher birth rates as it's more immediately advantageous, but it puts strain on females and leads to shorter lifespans. And of course, there are many other factors at work, like safety of the general habitat/environment, diseases, etc. So, maybe my question more generally is stress on population. So maybe my question more generally is stress on population reducing the likelihood of evolved longevity being common in individuals? Signed, David. P.S. Did a little bit of Googling, and it's interesting comparing lifespans in captivity. Rabbits can live around 8 to 10 years, chinchillas 15 to 20, etc., but that's still nowhere near a parrot. PPS, interesting and sad, elephants are the opposite. They can live 60 to 70 years in the wild, but only 40-ish in zoos. Okay, so, David, thank you for the question. That's a lot to unpack there. Okay, so first of all, evolution operates on individuals, not on entire populations. Now, evolution that operates on all individuals in a population, that evolutionary pressure, that selective pressure, will then, of course, extrapolate to the larger population. But that's the thing about evolution. There's no top-down order guiding any of it. So there's no population level selective pressure. There's only selective pressure at the level of the individual and at the level of the gene itself. So here's the thing about your question. Complexity. That's what it comes down to. It's not necessarily a predator-prey sort of thing that determines the lifespan in the examples that you give. It's that complex creatures need more time to develop as individuals. And that's why humans, for example, our individuals of our species don't reach maturity until, what do you want to call it, 20? And even there, like, you look at a 20-year-old college kid and you don't say, what a mature individual. The point is, we, because of our extremely complex brains, take a very long time to fully mature. And being a predator takes intelligence. Being a prey creature doesn't. Not nearly so much. So yeah, that's the thing. A typical, a very common survival strategy, and survival is here at the level of the gene. A very typical strategy that prey creatures then end up evolving is numerous offspring with very short gestational periods that take virtually no time to mature. But again, this is really a question of complexity. There is this formula out there that relates mammalian lifespan in terms of months to three factors. And one of those is brain weight, one of those is body weight, and one of those is metabolic rate. And the brain weight hugely makes this number larger. The body weight, as you correctly observed, makes this number smaller. Metabolic rate also makes this number smaller. The reason bats get away with long lifespans is bats are heterothermic mammals. So they might burn the same amount of calories as another small mammal about its size over the course of its lifespan. But bats can enter a state of torpor and can greatly reduce how many calories, can greatly reduce their metabolic rate, their resting metabolism. So they do a lot of living, but probably very little experiencing in that time. And they can slow down their heartbeat. They slow down how many calories their body is burning. And so their actual lifespan ends up increasing dramatically when compared to other mammals their size. There are other creatures out there that are also predatory in nature that live very long but have extremely low metabolic rates, like Greenland sharks, for example. Greenland sharks are currently the vertebrate species with the longest known lifespan. There was one study that was published in 2016, and if I recall, I think reading this study is literally why I had ever heard of Greenland sharks for the first time. This study looked at 28 specimens of Greenland sharks, and using radiocarbon dating, they aged all 28 specimens. The oldest one came out to be approximately 392 years, but with a huge margin of error of plus or minus 120 years. So that means that the oldest one was at least 272 years old and may have been over 500 years old. That's a Greenland shark. They live in very cold waters. They have very slow metabolisms. But they're predators, but they're not particularly intelligent. Their nervous system is not particularly complex, certainly not in comparison to a mammal. On the other hand, talk about your complex-brained predatory creatures. The phenomenon that humans call menopause is only happens in a very few other species. Killer whales, humans. There's another thing called a false killer whale, which is actually a very large dolphin. Short-finned pilot whales, beluga whales, and narwhals. Narwhals, they're the unicorn of the sea with the single horn. That was, as of 2018, as I recall, was the last expansion of that list. All of these creatures go through menopause because these are all creatures that have group learning, have culture, have family units. These are creatures where to have a grandmother, a wise grandmother that is in your pod or in your tribe who has seen most of the threats that face our group, that grandmother's genes are best spread by ensuring that her children and that her grandchildren, and in a lot of cases that her great-grandchildren, receive the benefit of her wisdom. So there has evolved a biological cutoff point where the danger of just having more kids, this is exactly the opposite now of the rabbit strategy, where the individual has passed a threshold where the danger of giving birth to more children is far outweighed by the advantage of making sure that all her wisdom possible is transmitted to her children and great-grandchildren. So, yeah, and the narwhal horn is indeed actually a tooth. All right. I think that is as far into that as I'm going to go for now. But yeah, so it's not predator prey. It is complexity of the nervous system and how long that creatures with more complex nervous systems tends to reproduce less and put a lot more resources into seeing that those offspring become breeding adult individuals themselves. All right. I need to see Encanto. I have not seen this yet. I hear it's very good. All right, scrolling back. Let's see if I missed anything. All right. Well, so join us tomorrow on the Vaudacity Network. We're going to have Dancing with Dari tomorrow, Tuesday, at 6:30. And, of course, Amanda on Demanda this Wednesday in her regular time slot of 7:30. And the Lovecast is going to be this week and next week. It will continue uninterrupted at its normal time of 6 o'clock on both occasions. But again, there will be No Fireside Tales 1 week from tonight. We will see you for the next Fireside Tales in 2 weeks from tonight. And hope that you have a happy Valentine's Day. So, with all that said, keep reading, keep thinking, and I love you all. Good night.